Welcome to the Dirty Verdict Podcast, where your host, trial lawyer Kyle Herbert and mediator Peter Taaffe break down Texas legal news, lawsuits, and verdicts. And now, here's Kyle and Peter.
All right, welcome back to the Dirty Verdict Podcast. I'm Peter Taaffe here with Kyle Herbert.
And I'm Kyle Herbert here with Peter Taaffe. Just couldn't be more pleased to be back here with you, Peter.
Well, excellent. Kyle, we're glad to have you back. You were back just now from my half hometown, Austin, Texas, where you were watching the InfoWars trial.
I was. It was a crazy taco wrapped in a fajita buried in nutso sauce. It was really, really stunning, to tell you the truth.
And just as we were preparing to start today, we saw on our respective phones that the jury has awarded there were two parents. Right. Two families. They awarded them each $2 million.
So not exactly. This is two parents of the same child who was murdered. The father and the mother. They're not currently married, and they awarded, I believe, the mom substantially more. But the verdict between the two was about $4.1 million, which, you know, I think that's actually not a terrible verdict, considering that this was for actual mental anguish damages. Juries very often don't know how to handle that. I'm sure the plaintiffs are a little bit disappointed. I mean, they were asking for a lot more than that, $75 million per person. But that is just the first step. There's going to be, this trial has been what's called bifurcated, which if you're not a lawyer, that means you get two catids. I'm just kidding. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's just got two pieces. It's got the initial verdict on actual damages and then a second chance for the jury to award more money in the punitive phase. And the punitive phase means the punishment phase.
When you go out like to bars, do you like to use a bunch of legal terms just to show off? Are you one of those guys?
No, Peter. When I go out to bars to meet ladies, I normally speak in Latin exclusively. I feel like, respondeat superior, sic transit gloria, that really gets the ladies on my side. And so some of those are legal terms, but they don't know because they don't speak Latin.
Yeah, I mean, sui generis, I think, is something that's a go-to.
You know, the girls that I have dated, their favorite Latin phrase is caveat emptor.
True.
Which makes total sense.
It does, whether they understand it or not.
Whether they speak Latin or not. I actually dated a girl named Gloria once, and so sic transit gloria made a lot of sense for her.
Okay, well, good. Well, that was an aside, but let's kind of frame this trial. Okay, so Sandy Hook was a school shooting. 20-something children were killed by, I guess, a 18 or so.
Yes.
Young man.
So I think the basic facts you've got. I think 20 school children and 6 adults were murdered by a fella named Adam Lanza, who was apparently kind of this emotionally unstable young man who had gone to that school and one day woke up and decided to take the life of his mother, and then went to the school and shot it up and killed a bunch of innocent folks.
So a similar fact pattern to the one we just heard about in South Texas or West Texas.
In Uvalde.
Yeah.
Probably. I think the jury is still out on what exactly happened at Uvalde, but the basic facts are similar. A weapon that can fire a bunch of bullets, guy kicks his way in the door and then starts murdering people.
Okay, and this trial, though, was not against the shooter or his estate or any of that. This trial was against a talk show host, probably with air quotes around that term, named Alex Jones, and his entity. His talk show is
so his show is called InfoWars, and I think they're owned by a parent company that's called Free Speech LLC or something like that. And
some Houston lawyers were representing two parents of one of the deceased children.
Right.
And what is it that he did that generated a lawsuit against him, Alex Jones?
So they're represented by a firm here in Houston called Farah and Ball, and the lawyers there, who, full disclosure, I know those guys pretty good, and I've actually I don't know the lawyer for Alex Jones nearly as well, but our paths have crossed once or twice, and we've met. Although I wouldn't say we're friends, but I have met him.
Is he based in Austin or?
No, I believe he's based in Houston. My recollection is he served as a U.S. attorney, and I think his practice is he does a fair amount of white collar crime, criminal defense.
Got it.
To be fair, that is, I apologize to him in advance if I've gotten that stuff wrong, but that's my recollection.
I looked him up when you told me you were going, because I hadn't just tangentially followed it. So I think that's fair. I think he had been at Baker Botts or federal clerk, U.S. attorney. I mean, obviously very credentialed person.
A very decent pedigree for a lawyer, for sure.
Okay, and so your friends were representing these two parents, and what is it that Alex Jones had done or said that generated the lawsuit?
Sure. So my understanding, what I've figured out from 2 days of trial, and first of all, you got to kind of have lived under a rock for the last 20 years to not know who Alex Jones is. He's the kind of nutty talk show host in Austin, who was kind of just on cable access when I started at the University of Texas. So I remember him on local cable access doing all kinds of bizarre stunts, right? And we can talk more about that later. But basically what he did is he began publishing articles and videos and sending reporters. And the basic gist of it was they kind of created and then spun a bunch of conspiracy theories about the shooting event at Sandy Hook. And those ranged from, there weren't any kids that had really been killed, that they were crisis actors, that the parents weren't real people, that the shooting was a false flag designed by our government to take away our weapons and to stir up public sentiment for gun control. And he had a lot of other theories that were just as weird and maybe, to be honest, uglier and more hateful. But he has a handful of yarns that he likes to spin about just about everything. It's the Gettys, it's the Rothschilds, it's the Trilateral Commission, it's Hillary Clinton, it's the Illuminati, it's not real, it's not fake, you can't trust anything. It's kind of the ugliest parts of the truther movement. And so with regard to this particular event, it didn't happen, wasn't real. The parents weren't real. The kids weren't real. It wasn't really investigated. No kids died. All this kind of crazy stuff. Now, to be fair, over the years, he has come back and put a finer point on some of those opinions. But it seems as if every time he walks back a statement with some sort of clarification, he then doubles down on something else that's equally hurtful, offensive, and downright insane. And so these parents, what they allege is that because of Alex Jones's reckless defamation, they have suffered not just the loss of their child, but the indignity of being treated as though they are liars and crisis actors, and that they've been exposed to all sorts of terrible damage to their reputation and mental anguish for having to deal with all kinds of nutters over the years. And this all happened about 10 years ago. So they've had a decade, 9.5 years, almost a decade of enduring this stuff.
All right. So obviously there's probably a lot of people who've said silly things about them and everyone else, but he obviously has a following, which leads to a lot of income.
Yep.
So was there any kind of testimony about how many people tune into his podcast or however he transmits his show or how he drives income?
So that's the interesting thing. Alex Jones and InfoWars decided not to participate in any meaningful way in the litigation. And so I believe the case has been on file for 4 years and change. And over the course of that, they just didn't participate in discovery. They didn't give up any documents, or if they did, it was after years of seeking them. And so the court entered what were essentially death penalty sanctions. Basically said, in the absence of your effort to mount a reasonable defense, we will assume that you are liable. And there's long case law on that in this state. And then I think at some point they issued a pretty massive sanction against InfoWars. I think almost $1 million. So they've already gotten $1 million from InfoWars, my understanding.
It's been paid.
Yeah, I believe it has.
Okay.
But the point is, there should not have been, because there was not really a fight about liability, because there was no discovery, there was not a ton for the plaintiffs to latch onto. And so all kinds of numbers got thrown out during the trial, that Alex Jones made $70 million in 1 year or $800,000 a day. And then Alex Jones would say, well, that's none of that's true. I'm bankrupt. And so the bottom line is Alex Jones makes an incredibly large amount of money based off of the silly things that he sells on his website. He sells prepper gear and, dried food in a bucket that you can store underground for when the end times come. And he sells he sells an incredible amount of vitamin supplements, so that you can, I'm not sure, defeat the globalists and the corporate media with your mind. So he hawks all that stuff on the internet.
Wasn't there at some point where he acknowledged that what he was saying about this was all, he knew it was wrong and he was just doing it to generate web traffic or fandom?
I don't know that he ever said that. He did say several times, and he says this consistently in the trial, and I think he says it on the television or on his podcast. He does. I think anybody that's been in a relationship is familiar with the apology that goes like this: "I'm sorry, and I'm sorry that if what I did hurt your feelings." That's pretty much his line. He will say, I think this is almost a direct quote. He would say, if these kids were real and if some people really died, then I'm sorry for that.
I see.
So it's a non-apology. Other times, he would, so when you're sitting there in the hot seat about to be accused of terrible things and facing losing millions of dollars, you can get contrite pretty fast. And so there were moments where he would say, I sure am sorry. I feel terrible. I know your child was real. I know you're real. If I hurt you, I feel terrible about it and I apologize. And then 10 minutes later, he would say, though I'm still sorry, you know that you're being manipulated by very, very dark and powerful forces throughout the world, and you need to wake up to that. That's a crazy thing to do, right?
This is testimony in court or just in prior?
Yeah. So he would start out apologizing in court, and then the next minute, kind of aw shucks. I sure didn't mean it if you were hurt, but you and I both know the reality. And he actually, there's a video out there that anybody can go look up, and it's called My Final Statement on Sandy Hook. And that is the perfect encapsulation of how he operates.
I see.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. If you are real people, I didn't mean it, but I know a crisis actor when I see one.
Yeah.
It's just really horrible stuff.
Okay, well, shifting gears, while this trial, or right about the time, some entity filed for bankruptcy. Is that right?
So it's my understanding that InfoWars has filed for bankruptcy several times. I think they had a trial setting a couple of months back where they were set to go, and Alex Jones or InfoWars, one of the two, I'm not sure, filed for bankruptcy.
Okay.
There's no doubt that any significant judgment Alex Jones is going to drop himself and or these entities into bankruptcy.
Yeah. So,
he said he would do that. He's done that. And he said at trial to the jury, he said, if you award any damages above $2 million, I am filing for bankruptcy. We will be, well, he didn't say I'm filing for bankruptcy. He said, we can't, it'll be the end of my
right.
deal if any judgment over $2 million.
So the plaintiffs will have to get a judgment, liquidate their claim, and then go to the bankruptcy court and try to get it out of there. Is that right?
And
through a reorganization or whatever.
Right. And I mean, who knows what Alex Jones can do with that money? But the amount of money that he's brought in through that website appears to be astoundingly large. Mm-hmm. If Alex Jones is to be believed. I mean, I think he said at some point in the trial it came out that in the past he had said it was his goal to do $70 million in revenue a year and that he had attained that. So, I mean, that's a significant chunk of change. But on top of that, there are 2 more trials stacked up.
You got a punitive damages in this case? Just that segment of it?
That, and then there's another jury trial in Connecticut. Exact same situation.
How many people on that one?
I don't know.
Okay.
And then I think there's another trial in Texas. Exact same situation.
With your friends or different groups?
Different folks. And so there's going to be 2 more trials. Whether those get sucked into the bankruptcy court, I don't know. But you're going to have a bunch of competing claims.
Okay, so I watched some of it online.
Yep.
And one thing I thought was interesting is this judge, I think it was after every witness, once both sides had finished and said we passed the witness, then the judge would ask the jury to submit questions for asking for information that they didn't think was elicited in the lawyer questioning.
Right, they sure did.
And then so she would then say, list them all out outside the presence of the jury and let the lawyers, either she'd on her own say, I'm not asking that.
Right.
Or there's some, she's like, well, I'm going to do this. What do you think? And they could either object or not object or whatever.
Right.
I saw that after one of the parents. Did they do that for every?
I believe they did that for every witness, and I've never seen that practice.
Yeah.
It was explained to me that several jurisdictions in Texas do that. I've never seen it.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I think, the way cases have been tried is the same, probably in most places, the same as it was in the 1800s.
Right.
We have a little technology with some Zoom and video depots and that thing, but otherwise it's pretty much the same.
Right.
I do like that concept. To me, it's interesting. And what I took away, and we talked about this before we came on, was some of the questions reinforced to me what I've seen personally and what I tell people now as a mediator, that you have no idea what issues the jury will turn on.
I would agree with that. And as I sat there and listened to those questions, and I wasn't there for the whole trial. I was there for 2 days. The 2 days I was there, it was as though, with this caveat, it seemed like for every one question that was useful and on point and insightful about what the jury might be thinking, there was another question that was just totally irrelevant, totally out of left field, or something completely ancillary to the process. So I think if you get the right kind of judge to handle those questions, it could be really useful. I don't know. Have that's never happened to you in a trial?
Never seen it. I was thinking, I'm sure jury consultants would love that.
Oh yeah.
But it's kind of like with Fort Dyer, when you ask questions. I mean, you can have 2 very good jury consultants and 2 very good trial lawyers, and a juror will say something, and they can take complete different takeaways, and they're probably very valid. And if they gave the reasons, they're valid. But one would say, "Oh, you got to keep this person," and the other would say, "Absolutely, you got to get rid of that person."
Right.
So that's the thing with those questions. There's like so much info that you could probably sit around with 10 excellent trial lawyer, jury consultants who would, have completely different conclusions of what that meant. Maybe that's just one juror that's asked a question,
right?
And the other 11 are like, "That's stupid. I don't care about that."
Right.
Or maybe that's something you're like, "Well, we're synthesizing. There's a lot of questions in this little kind of pod. We need to retool what we're doing, focus more on damages or focus more on this aspect of liability." Or,
right. But then maybe you're retooling your whole case based on someone who's an outlier.
Right.
Or doesn't understand what's going on.
Because they're not, as the juror, maybe judge instructions are not always followed, but they're not supposed to be talking about the case until they get the case, meaning close of evidence, get the charge.
That's right. Although, this is the hard part about being a lawyer, is nobody wants me on their jury. I would pay money to go be on a civil trial jury.
Yeah. Well, they say don't research anything on the web.
And so even in a case like this, and I have no idea, right? Like I've never spoken to any of these jurors. I have not spoken to any of these lawyers since the case was given over to the jury yesterday afternoon. But so Alex Jones in this trial, and you might have seen this, he would show up for 20 minutes of the trial, and then he would go outside and he'd give some insane rant to the media about how this judge is destroying democracy and this is a witch hunt and, whatever nonsense he spews. And then he would drive straight to his studio, just around the corner, I guess, in downtown Austin, and put on a 20-minute episode about, these jurors are blue collar. These jurors don't know what planet they're on. This judge is going to destroy America. Like all this insanity. And do we realistically think that their friends and family who know they're on jury duty aren't blowing up their texts? I mean, and that's not to say that jurors would do anything wrong, but we live in a different, so we write, the courts wrote these jury kind of sequestration instructions in what might as well be 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Those judges, the people that wrote those rules didn't have cell phones, and they didn't have real-time media, and they didn't have real-time blog posts, and they certainly didn't have Twitter. So you're right. Like the idea that these jurors aren't hearing the outside noise it's a real interesting issue.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because as we said, it both popped up on our phones when the verdict came out. Well, so if you're a juror and you've got Twitter, do you see something like Alex Jones testifies the judge is being unfair or whatever, and that pops up and they can't unsee it. But they didn't actively go look for it, but it's just Twitter has an auto or CNN or whatever if you subscribe to those
right. And
apps.
So that was an interesting thing that happened in the trial. There would be testimony, whatever else would happen during the court, through the course of the day. Then Alex would go and give testimony about it. And in one instant, he gave some really aggressive testimony about what he thought about the jurors, and it was very unflattering. He gave some testimony about what he thought about the witnesses, which was terribly unflattering. He put a picture up on his website of the face of their judge in flames. And so, one of the things that I thought the plaintiffs did quite effectively was to pull that information down right off of the website. And when the court reconvened, they'd say, Judge, we have some more questions for Mr. Jones. And, are you taking this seriously? Do you think this is a game? Do you think that this jury are crisis actors? Because you've said that. Oh, no, I'd never say that. Well, and then they'd play the video. These jurors are all crisis actors or whatever. Wow. That's not a direct quote, but, did you put a picture up of the judge face on fire? No. Okay, well, look at this picture. Oh, I didn't. What I mean is she's trying to burn down liberty and the flames are coming out of her head or whatever crazy thing he would say. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen a jury trial like that.
I saw something. Did his lawyer give the contents of his entire phone to the plaintiff's lawyers?
So all I can tell you is what I heard in court. And I'll say this I'll tell you the stuff that I have heard represented to me as fact, and then I'll give you what I think is my surmise. What the plaintiffs stated in court to the judge, which anybody can go listen to, was that 12, now 13 days ago, they were given a data drop link from opposing counsel for the plaintiff, counsel for the defendants, that said, hey, here's some supplementation or something like that. Here you go. And that the plaintiff's lawyers opened it up and they realized pretty quickly that this was not regular discovery, that it was an image of the phone, and then it contained some privileged information. I think that they went through the stuff that appeared to be emails and texts, or at least the texts, And I think they represented to the court that stuff that they could obviously. Sorry, let me backtrack. Let me be real specific here.
Yeah, you should, because you're just repeating what was stated in open court, public record.
That's right, but I want to make sure I get this correct. What the plaintiffs say is they were given this link. They opened it. The minute they opened it, they said, as soon as they started going through documents and figuring out that it had privileged communications in it and attorney notes or whatever else that every lawyer knows they're not supposed to get, they stopped looking, and then they sent an email back to opposing counsel and said, hey, we think you need to double check this. You might not have sent us what you were supposed to send us. These materials, these might be privileged. These we don't think this was sent to us on purpose. And apparently the defense lawyers sent an email back saying, disregard, we'll supplement at a later date.
Got it.
And then I think you get 10 or 11 days to do your snapback, your clawback, and they didn't do anything. And then after that, it becomes fair game. And I think after that happened, they went through portions of what was produced and found documents that should have been produced. For example, the text messages that they used in court, where essentially in a text, Alex Jones, one of his employees, says, hey, this stuff we're putting out about this particular COVID-related post is obviously false, and we know it, and you know it, and we have to take it down, and this is Sandy Hook all over again. And Alex Jones responded, yep, I get it, something like that.
Yeah.
And so
that was the end of that. I mean, the context I saw was the plaintiff's lawyer said, did you know that your lawyers gave us your entire phone?
100%.
In open court.
That's accurate.
Yeah, that's the part I saw. So, yeah, that raises 50 different issues for lawyers.
Right. And, I would say I've seen the lawyer for the defense getting skewered out there for that. And the reality is I hate to Monday morning quarterback anything that any lawyer does. It isn't. We have incredibly difficult jobs, and maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was a mistake by his staff. When you're in that week getting ready for trial, like, you might as well be on planet Mars. Right. I don't know. I don't know why it happened. I don't know how it happened. It certainly made for a lot of, and appropriately so, high drama in the courtroom.
Well, it sounded like from other stories that these lawyers did not particularly like each other.
I would say that's 100% accurate.
Yeah.
I'd say that's 100% accurate.
Now, we all know that you have these big fights with other lawyers, and then once the case is over, you shake hands and have a beer. Doesn't sound like that's going to happen in this case.
I got to tell you, I know, with the exception of the judge, I think I knew every lawyer in that courtroom. And I don't look. I've met some really terrible folks doing this job. I've met some really lawyers that really operate in bad faith. I don't think any of those lawyers in that room are dirtbags. I think they both look. We're talking about a case that has to do with the murder of 26 people, and someone saying that didn't ever happen. So you got to imagine emotions are running extremely high. But, the lawyers didn't get along, nor would I have expected them to.
Well, I see, we go to law school and we have these, or some of us have these kind of illustrative dreams of, Clarence Darrow and Atticus Finch and people like that. And that's the note I don't know the defense lawyer. Never met him until I looked him up when I saw his name just to see what his background was.
And I, to be fair, don't either. I've come across him a handful of times, known people that worked with him. Who knows? Yeah.
So at face value, my thing is, I don't know him, don't know what his motivations are, but my gut response is everyone deserves a lawyer, and that's kind of a high calling to represent what appears to be a not very liked person. And knowing full well that you're going to be identified with that person. And now these days, like in every news story that comes out. So I got to give him credit without knowing him. I got to at least on my little chart where I'm kind of charting what impresses me or not. That part impresses me if that's where he came at it.
You know, I 100% understand what you're saying. At the same time, you know, I feel that way about criminal lawyers.
Yeah,
Because the coercive power of the state is massive, and everyone deserves the opportunity to have an attorney that will hold the state to their burden, because you will lose your life, your liberty.
And if they start chipping away at the people that don't have any power to hire good lawyers,
Sure.
then that subjects everyone to a lower standard than what's in the Constitution.
That's right. However, this was a civil case.
Right.
And if you are representing any party in what you know will be a high-profile case, especially a villain in a high-profile case, you've got to, I think you've got to do some soul-searching. Am I doing what I believe is right and moral in accordance with whatever I believe to be right and moral? And if you get over that hurdle, you got to say, am I going to make enough money so that if this case goes south and my life is forever associated with this goofball, am I okay with it? I've represented plaintiffs where I've had to tell the jury, hey, my biggest concern is that you're not going to give my client a fair shake because my client's not a very likable person. That's just the reality. I would, however, in this case, add, in my personal opinion, Alex Jones is somewhat significantly beyond unlikable. I think he's not somebody that I would represent.
Well, maybe we can have that lawyer come in on our show and he can tell us where he's coming from.
So, I tell you, I've invited the lawyers from Fair and Ball to come on. I've got a reasonable expectation that they will. And I am absolutely going to invite the lawyers for Mr. Jones, because however it pans out, good or bad, the lawyer that represented Mr. Jones is going to have this must have been a fascinating, if painful, experience.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear his side of it. So I'll absolutely extend that invitation.
Well, so tomorrow will be punitives. We'll come back on our later show and discuss that.
Yeah.
But thanks, Kyle, for that report from the field.
I can submit my bills for travel and my hotel stay at the W to the Dirty Verdict for reimbursement. Is that fair?
Yes, the accountant is standing by,
Excellent.
waiting.
So I'll get those over to accounting and HR.
It was the hotel room was under $79.95, right?
It was the standard rate through AAA.
Good.
And that's been approved by the adjuster.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for that report from the field. And with that, we'll end this segment and on to the next one.
So this is what we like to call the potpourri round, or if we were playing Jeopardy, they would call it potent potables. Peter, knowing that I really am not very smart and only practice in a very narrow area of the law, he has done a bunch of research on some interesting cases. He's just going to roll the ball out and see if I have any knowledge about what's going on and can comment in a coherent fashion.
Well, I have a little more free time, nature of my practice,
Sure.
than you do. And so that's why I like to keep apprised of what's going on out there in the world, legal world. And one of the goals of the Dirty Verdict podcast is to take some of this news and go a little deeper than you may see in a short news story or in print or on your local TV. So this one, this may hit a little home with you, Kyle.
Oh, man.
It did with me.
Okay.
There's a proposed class action lawsuit filed, I believe, in New York against Popeyes Chicken.
Well, this is a class action against Popeyes.
Yes.
Dismissed with prejudice.
Popeyes, yes. Well known for a revival for their chicken sandwich, which I think that was maybe COVID around there where that was a showstopper. It was the Rubik's Cube or the Teletubby or the, what was it? Cabbage Patch Kid.
I need to confess my bias. When that sandwich came out, I drove down to the Popeyes at like 610 in Richmond and went in and bought like they had like hot, mild, and medium. And I bought like one of each for all of my employees. I spent like $150 on sandwiches.
Are you sure you did that, or did you take them out and resell them on eBay?
That's an ugly thing to say, Peter.
Okay, good. You didn't. You sure? You're not under oath, Kyle. It's fine.
Hold on. I've got to ask our staff. Could we get some Popeyes?
That's a good idea.
All right.
Well,
tell me about this class action.
Hold on. So the lawsuit claims that their chicken tenders are not made from actual chicken tenderloin. The loin, which apparently is not actually the loin of the chicken. It's part of the breast. That's this tender under part of the breast. Whereas other chicken purveyors, they use the tender loin.
Well, this takes me back to what Mark Twain once said. There are lies, damn lies, and chicken tenderloins.
That's true.
I just made that up.
I was going to say trademark it right now.
That's terrible. My daughters are going to hear that joke and they're going to make that face at me, that dad joke face.
I'm sure it'll be subject to some TikToks and such. So that's the lawsuit. So we will monitor this very important lawsuit.
What do they allege is the damage that they've been deceiving, that Mr. Popeye has been deceiving consumers?
They paid more. They were paying
loin.
for some loin and they didn't get no loin. They got it just chicken tender, which is part of the chicken. It's chicken breast, which, like I said, I wasn't counting on getting a loin. I'd gladly take it if that's what was offered. But that is chicken tenders.
When you order a Wagyu burger, do you expect it to be made out of real Wagyu? Because my guess is it's probably not.
I would think. Of course, I would not know the first thing about what the difference is.
I can't imagine there is.
I mean, most of this stuff, when you buy a chicken tender, you should be more focused on the quality of the shortening they're using to fry it with, because that's mostly what you're eating.
So that's my thought, is if you are going to Popeyes looking for fine cuts of meat, you are perhaps in the wrong business.
Well, stay tuned for a coupon for 5 cents off your next tenderloin order.
The attorneys,
part of your settlement.
The attorneys associated with this claim have pocketed $25 million, but we will give you 13 cents off of your next Popeyes.
Probably have to get a 16-piece to.
Yes, that's what I meant, really, like the family style.
Okay, well, like I said, we will update our loyal listeners on this very, very important case.
I'm going to add that to my like my Twitter alarm, so I make sure.
Yeah,
I got it. Yeah, that's hard hitting stuff.
Well, based on your purchase history, you may be a lead plaintiff.
Yeah.
At some point. All right, so we'll move on. Next topic.
Lay it on me.
Okay, this is late July. Collin County, North Texas, known as one of the more conservative counties in the state of Texas.
Is that west? Is that
north of Dallas?
Say north of Dallas. So probably all of the worst things you can imagine about Texas.
Depending on your perspective.
Very good. Is that where Rockwall is?
No, Rockwall is east of Dallas. I don't know what the towns are that are up there, but I know, Plano.
Oh,
Plano, yeah. So this involved, which I don't know. I make no judgment. I actually like Dallas, even though
you would.
Well, I know growing up in Houston, and we had that rivalry. But one of my sons lives there now, and I'm not a Dallas hater.
Sure.
But Collin County, known as a very conservative,
sure,
probably the most conservative, I bet, if you ran some of the numbers. In that county, a barbecue restaurant called Focus Barbecue, according to the press story, overserved some teenagers alcohol, and they became intoxicated. They got in a car. They had a horrible accident. All 3 died. The jury in Plano or Collin County awarded $15 million to the families of those young men. It sounds like this may have been one of those restaurants that we all identified when we were 15 and 16, and that is where they take the McLovin ID from Hawaii or any others, like your library card that doesn't even have your birth date. No, there's several, I passed several of them that I went to when I was in high school on our way here. So takeaways from that, Kyle.
Hold on. So 3 kids died.
Yep.
15 million per kid.
I believe it was 15 total was the verdict. So I assume 5 million per.
Seems low.
One of the largest verdicts in Collin County history.
Move out of Collin County.
Yep.
Unless you want to run a really unsafe bar, in which case that's where you should move.
No telling what the insurance was. So if and how much the families will recover. Obviously, they won't have their children back, which is the most important thing. Okay, so takeaways. This is a dram shop, is what we hear at dram shop. That's a law term. I don't really know where it originated from. If I were a really good host, I would have researched it and told how the pubs and
hold on. Isn't like a glass of scotch called a dram?
Well, you know better than me. I don't know.
That's because you drink clear booze, which is for women and people from Dallas only, which makes sense, Peter.
Excellent. Well, this is just club soda. I don't know.
All right. Well, so I've got a little bit of cream soda here.
Good.
Which is just IBC cream soda.
Yeah, that's great.
But if this were filled with scotch, I believe you could call this a dram. And so maybe where they sell drams would be a bar, which would be a dram shop. But it would probably be, way back then, it would be a shoppe, SHOPPE. So dram shop.
Right. Ye old
dram shoppe.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think that's where the term comes from, but I'll look that up in my Black's English dictionary.
We'll get that figured out. So the concept is, if a bar or restaurant that serves alcohol serves someone who is, I think the term of art is obviously intoxicated,
right,
and then lets them leave, then they face liability for what may happen to that person.
For sure.
There's a statute in Texas that it takes the place of any other, I think, common law causes of action. There's certain defenses to the owner, operator. If their servers are TABC certified, they enjoy certain additional defenses and protections, but they're still not off the hook totally.
Do you know how that law accounts for serving someone underage? Does that change the analysis?
I believe I'd have to look at that from a commercial standpoint. On the social host liability, like if you had people over at your house, there is I believe you're immune completely if the person you're serving is over 21. It may be 18. I'd have to double check that. But there's a tweak on the law whether you're just an individual, non-professional serving alcohol to people versus.
I got you.
I know for a fact that if you have a bunch of friends over your house and they get drunk and go do something, you're not on the hook for it.
Okay, good.
I mean, you can get sued.
You've met some of my friends.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one takeaway. We want to do takeaways all the time.
Okay.
And obviously this is not legal advice and not intended to be relied upon for legal advice.
If you're turning to this show for legal advice, call me for some real life advice.
Yeah. But anyhow, so in the grand kind of the analysis of dram shop cases, there's first party and third party. So first party I'm sure there's a different term of it. That's how I look at it. The person that consumes the alcohol is the person that also gets hurt, which is effectively this one. I think from the plaintiff lawyer standpoint, the better case is just the regular Joe that's just driving down the road and some drunk person who was overserved hits them. Those are considered very strong cases most of the time. So a couple of things though, I think takeaways. If you're a bar owner, a restaurant owner, get insurance. I think I've never run one of those, but I'm sure your insurance company probably has some best practices that they insist you follow as a condition of providing insurance.
One would hope so.
Follow those, get your people TABC certified, and actually not just check the box, but actually do some active training. And then if you're a family member who loses someone in this situation, some people may gut response go, well, that was their fault. They drank. Not always the case. So probably consult with someone like Kyle.
Happy to chat.
Who will not only tell you if you have a viable claim, but can also tell you the origins of the term dram shop.
So what do you think? $5 million for a dead kid?
It goes back to what we were talking about on the Alex Jones verdict segment. I think those, it is so hard to tell the numbers on a death, and it really depends on the 12 people that are in the box on how they view money, how they view how it's presented by the lawyers. Just so many variables.
Let me ask this. This is kind of a factual question that I'm embarrassed that I don't know. I think I know the answer to it. You can operate a bar or restaurant that serves booze without insurance. Like you can get a liquor license and not carry insurance. Do you know if that's true?
I'm not aware of that.
We're going to put our research staff on top of that because I've actually sued a couple of restaurants. One was a dram shop case. It was a bad security and a dram shop case, kind of all rolled into one, that I made $0 on because they had no coverage at all. And I thought this was years ago. I thought I did some research and figured out that you can serve booze in Texas, but not carry insurance, which leads to the obvious question, which is how many members of the legislature own bars? I bet that's the answer to the question. How many members of the legislature own bars or restaurants?
You would think that because they hold some power in that the state issues a license to sell alcohol.
Yeah.
And
or sell a dram.
Yeah. Or at a ye old dram shoppy.
Yep.
But I've had that come up, I think, in cases where there's not insurance on a similar situation. But they hold the power. I mean, you have to get liability insurance, even though it's very modest, but at least you have to get something as a condition to be issued a license to drive a car.
Right.
So that's a good point. That should be, Kyle, maybe you should run for office.
I can't imagine I'd be elected in this or any other jurisdiction, which is a testament to democracy.
$7,200 a year is the pay for a state rep. Does that change your mind?
Let me explain to you my thoughts on public office, and I'm only going to say this once. Mark Twain once said, in America, anybody could be president. It's one of the hazards of citizenship.
Well taken. Well taken. Okay, with that, we've given our takeaways. We'll be back with a definitive answer on some of the questions raised by Kyle.
Probably not.
Next topic, Kyle.
Lay it on me.
Dallas, Texas. You've expressed your maybe skepticism for my affinity for Dallas, but
there's one weekend a year. I'm going to Dallas. I'm getting a funnel cake. I'm getting about 17 beers in a wax cup and about 3 or 4 corn dogs. Other than that, I don't know that America or Western civilization has much use for Dallas.
Well, based on some of the stories we're seeing, Dallas may be called the Florida's Texas because
that makes a lot of sense.
This one, or Texas is Florida, sorry.
Right.
This story, again, was recent, last couple of weeks. Titled, Dallas Taco Bell manager poured scalding water on customers over incorrect order.
Well, hold on. Taco Bell got the order wrong?
Yes.
And then they assaulted their their patrons with hot water?
No telling. If they have chicken, if they don't have tenderloin in their chicken, we're gonna really be upset about that. I mean, so this one's interesting in that noted national civil rights attorney Ben Crump is one of the lawyers for the plaintiffs in that case.
What is the civil rights angle on Taco Bell? And I say this not in jest. I'm genuinely interested.
I don't believe they're asserting any civil rights causes of action under the statute. I believe they're just saying negligence, gross negligence, and negligent retention, hiring, training, that kind of thing.
Chalupa negligence.
Well, I mean, is it negligent to order a chalupa at Taco Bell?
I'm not sure if that's a protected right. We're going to have to get Samuel Alito in here.
Yeah, that may be. That's just not a smart move to order it. So apparently, this manager did not like these customers.
Sure.
And they had a disagreement. Of course, we don't get the details on what time of day it is, or let me say night.
If you are at a Taco Bell before 10 p.m., you've got some life choices that you need to reconsider.
There's a high likelihood that this was the late night edition of Taco Bell.
Fourth meal.
Yeah. So it was a lady and a minor child, and the allegedly, according to the suit, the restaurant manager came from behind a counter with a scalding bucket of water and poured it on the woman and the minor. Taco Bell, of course, gave a statement. We're sorry it happened, but it's not our fault. Something along those lines. So there's a lot going on there.
There's so many ways I could go with this.
Yeah, I mean, let's start legal. Okay, so Kyle, from your perspective, most of restaurants, fast food, are owned by franchisees.
Sure.
So one suing Taco Bell corporate, I assume they're going to say that's not. Well, first of all, they're going to say you can't sue us in Texas because we're based in whatever state they're in, and
I assume they were based in Mexico. I mean, that is
true. Yeah. Could be. Actually, I don't think so. I'm not sure. Maybe they're based in Dallas. There's a lot of corporate headquarters.
That actually would not surprise me.
In Dallas. But assuming that you got that issue, franchisee, but the second issue is, are they on the hook if you have an employee that does something that is not in the course and scope of employment, meaning they don't hire them to scald their customers with boiling water?
All right. If it's a manager, they are a vice principal, and you are on the hook for everything they do. There's a case out there called like GTE Southwestern versus Jack and Jill, I don't remember, where like somebody went nuts and assaulted a fellow employee. So if it's a vice principal, they're definitely on the hook. And that's in a restaurant context, that's a manager level or up. If it's just some random, your fry cook, I thought there was a statute out there that said that you're not liable for the criminal acts of your weird employees. However, that then takes you back into this negligent training, negligent retention. And if there is anything on this employee's record whereby some manager said, hey, Sally Sue or Jimmy Joe has a little bit of a temper, maybe they shouldn't be working the front register, my guess is they're going to be liable for it. That said, if you're Taco Bell, I'd make a run for the border, grab some cash, and see if you can pay these folks off. That's a terrible pun, but it makes me sad because there's a spot in my heart for Taco Bell. For the most part, there's a Taco Bell right across the street from my house, and I have to say this: those folks at the Taco Bell drive-thru or the walk-up, they put up with some stuff. They've seen some things.
True.
They've got that 1,000-yard stare. And I recall going to my local Taco Bell one afternoon, not at 10 o'clock at night. And I got very frustrated with the young lady who was at the window because I couldn't hear her. And I kept yelling because I couldn't hear her and she couldn't hear me. And I could see her name tag. It was like Lindsay. And I yelled, I said, Lindsay, this is ridiculous. I can't hear you. And she leaned out of the window and she said, it was not my idea to put this Taco Bell next to a truck-sized car wash, but here we are.
Well, I have to say I like Lindsay.
And I was like you're dropping some truth on me, Lindsay.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're right. I'm sorry for yelling at you.
And a lot better to get truth than a bucket of scalding water.
But if you could get a bucket of tacos along with that universal truth, who's going to complain about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For 59 cents. I mean, Taco Bell is the best deal, bang for your buck, I think, in the food business.
Tell me, what does the petition say about damages?
I don't have a copy of the petition. I do know a couple more facts, and that is, so the manager got him once, and then I assume it's a he, because I think there's some reference to that. The manager doubled down and went back and got another bucket and came at him again, and they dodged
hold on.
it.
So let me make sure I understand. The person throwing the bucket was a manager. Taco Bell's hosed.
Well, when you said
hosed,
when you drop that knowledge about manager, I took note because the article talks about, probably says the word manager 10 times,
Yeah.
which suggests to me that the petition says manager more than that.
Oh, yeah.
And so, and obviously, whoever, Ben Crump's a smart guy, and I'm sure who he's partnered with, they're smart. They probably also knew what you said about that.
What state is it in?
Texas, Dallas.
Yeah. So black letter law, if you are the manager of a restaurant, you are a vice principal.
Got it.
And the owner, the owning entity, whether franchisee or corporate, is 100% on the hook for your bad acts.
Yeah. Okay. And then they can, as we talked about on that charter, that $7 billion death verdict, also in Dallas. That was the issue. Is, remember, the employee came back to a cable company employee came back to the house and ended up murdering a lady.
Right. I've actually read a few things about that case since. Not that we need to rehash it, but the facts that I've seen developed about that case seems like that cable company did literally everything wrong.
Right. On hiring and managing. And
looks like they had multiple opportunities to get this guy out of the position where he could harm the public, and they neglected to make really any effort.
So that case, we know the facts because it was tried, so it was fully discovered. This case is at its beginning stages, so that will be the issue for Attorney Crump to develop among other things, develop if they were negligent in hiring this guy or if there were other. Something tells me that someone doesn't.
I think my point is the negligent hiring, retention, and training goes out the window.
Well, you get it on top of the other stuff.
You might get that on top, but you don't need it.
Yeah.
He is the voice and actor on behalf of the corporation because he is their vice principal. It's as though he's an owner.
I think you're right. I think it would be good, helpful, because I think a jury in their mind could go, you know what, that's not their fault that this guy lost it.
Sure.
But generally people that throw scalding water on children, or at least minors, I don't know how old the minor was,
are single, people without kids.
Yeah.
If you've had kids, if you are a parent and someone says, we threw scalding hot water on a kid, you're like, I get it.
Yeah, it happens.
It happens.
No, so that something tells me there may be some documentation in the file.
You think?
From either probably people that work for that manager.
My guess is setting up the depositions of his subordinates will be happening shortly. And Ben Crump, if you need some help litigating this case and need some basic ideas about litigation, I'm happy to discuss that with you. But deposing his subordinates is probably a great place to start.
Yep. Okay. Takeaways. I'll drop this one. And you alluded to this. Remember that people that work at the Taco Bells of the world
deserve your respect.
Yeah, be nice.
And your kindness.
Yes, they're in patience. Most of all, patience.
Because let me take a step back. Of all the things that are scalding hot that you could have thrown on you at a Taco Bell, water might be the least offensive.
True. Yeah, we've seen, we could probably do 10 hours of stories on that. But yeah, don't be nice to them and be patient with them because you're afraid they're going to throw scalding water on them.
Be a decent human.
Just be a good human being and understand that, you know what, they're probably not... that's probably not the job that they're striving for in life, but that's for whatever reason, that's where they are then. So be patient, take a deep breath. Maybe you got extra cheese and you shouldn't have.
Let me say this. In my personal Taco Bell experience, I don't even check the bag anymore.
Yeah, it's a surprise. It's part of the fun.
It's a lottery.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make that Taco Bell worker suffer the indignity of me explaining that they did their job wrong. Because they care as much about that job as I care as much about me eating food at that point. So I should be able to live with whatever the consequences are of me getting in that Taco Bell driveway. And so, like I said, I want their commitment to serving me food to be commensurate with my concern about food. And if I get what I get, that's fine.
Look, my deal is I'll take whatever they give me as long as they don't spit or put anything in it other than what's dictated by Taco Bell's menu policy. That's all. If I get that, I'm happy.
Do your best, Taco Bell.
Yeah. Okay. And obviously takeaway is, again, we've talked about this before. If you run a company, I know it's hard hiring people, especially now, but do the background check, do the training, document stuff. If you need to terminate someone because they have some problems, do it. I know that's easy for some lawyers to say, but that's why lawyers like Kyle are unfortunately still in business, because people do things that cause real bad injury to people.
I tell people all the time, they say, ask me what I do, and I tell them I'm a personal injury plaintiff's lawyer doing trial work, and they say, oh man, I hate lawyers. And I usually say something like, if the majority of Americans would simply act more mature than your typical fourth grader, I'd be out of a job in 6 months.
Yeah, or drive like a fourth grader would drive. Like that's, just aspire to that.
Fair enough.
As we, every day is a new day on the roads. Okay, so those are the takeaways on the Taco Bell scalding incident. And
Can we get the staff to just put in a boom?
Oh, you get a Taco Bell.
We need a Taco Bell gong.
We're going to do a different bell sound than our standard topic change.
Yeah, it'll be a Taco Bell gong.
All right, we'll go to our next topic, Kyle. And this is a local. Now this is a Houston story.
Lay it on me.
All right. This is a recent story. Houston doctor suspended for vaccine misinformation files $25 million defamation lawsuit against Methodist Hospital.
Tell me this person's name.
Should we just keep names out of it for right now? Unless you need to check your conflicts before you.
That's my point.
Okay, this is in the news. Her name is Dr. Mary Bowden.
Don't know anything about her.
Okay.
Wait a minute. I mean, I've heard her name because I think I might have cheated, Peter. I think I might have.
Did you read some of the stories?
I think I in passing might have read an article. She was at Methodist. She was saying some kind of nutty stuff about the vaccines, and then they asked her politely to stop several times, and then they canned her.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
I don't know if she was fired. Yeah, publicly ousted her. Yeah. So
she lost. I don't know that she was in the hospital. I think maybe she had rights at the facility, or maybe that's wrong. Are you able to tell?
I don't know, because I've never really understood the whole credentialing and privileges thing.
Okay, that makes sense because you're really informed.
Yeah, of course.
You know as much about MedMal as I do about Dram Shop.
Yes, that's very little, although I have lots of friends that know it well.
And some very good MedMal lawyers.
Let's see. So in November, the hospital announced on Twitter that Bowden's hospital privileges were suspended, there you go, for spreading dangerous misinformation about COVID-19 vaccines.
Yep.
Which were harmful to the community.
True.
As a result, she resigned, filed a lawsuit. I guess it was kind of a Rule 202, or for people not in the inside baseball, you file a petition asking for information without necessarily suing anyone.
Right. Yet
you say you intend to probably sue, but
you intend to prosecute, but you got to get some information without suing.
Yeah. So anyhow, so now she has filed a lawsuit in Harris County State Court asserting defamation claims against Methodist. I'm not sure. We'd obviously, if we were real on it, we would maybe read the petition. And
could you tell me what court they're in?
They, let's see.
Because go ahead.
189th, which I believe is Judge Scott Dollinger, but will be a new judge come January.
All right.
So first of all, we've had a long discussion about your field trip to watch the Alex Jones defamation trial. Now, you probably have this experience as a plaintiff lawyer that gets a lot of calls. I, in my day, at a firm that had a lot of calls, we would get quite a few defamation lawsuits, of which we took 0 of them.
Yep.
How about yourself?
Have I ever taken a defamation case?
Yes. Filed one.
That's a good question. I don't think I have. If I have, I don't recall it.
The reason why is a few of them. One, the SLAPP law, anti-SLAPP law,
sure,
which was actually pretty much written for defamation, has been extended well beyond its intent, I believe.
I agree with that.
It has now been kind of maybe tailored back a little bit, but that was the whole, I think, the reason for the law, which is, if you're going to accuse someone of defamation, then you better have evidence of it.
True.
And
which I fundamentally don't disagree with.
And so SLAPP law says that they can file a motion to dismiss, and then if it applies, you got to come forth with evidence. Okay, that's one thing, which is smart in her case. She did a 202, which I said the pre-suit investigation thing to go get, maybe that was their intent, to go get some information to protect them. I know for a fact, because I've had to litigate this, SLAPP, the Houston appellate courts say that the SLAPP law does not apply to a 202, a pre-suit investigative lawsuit petition. Other districts, appellate districts, do find that it does. So
Probably in Collin County.
Yeah, no, Corpus is one, for instance.
Would not have guessed that.
Yeah. At least the last time I looked at it. So you file a defamation lawsuit, you have to have your ducks in a row. 1, 2, your damages. What are your damages?
Well,
anguish?
for her, in her case, she's going to say that limiting her license, limiting her ability to practice. That's going to be, I think that probably the best part about her lawsuit is damages. My guess is the rest of it's nonsense.
Yeah.
But I bet the damages are realistic.
Yeah, and that's interesting because there'd be an interplay. I mean, if you have, because I don't know if they have.
Did she resign or did she get canned?
She resigned.
Well,
but she says because
she resigned because she felt sad about not being able to lie to people about COVID.
Yeah, I don't know if it was. They published false and defamatory statements to the press on social media, affording no due process. So I'm not. Yeah, that's her. So she.
Who's her lawyer?
It was someone I'm not familiar with. I'm sure let's see, it's a 19-page petition, so we can always go read it if we're like really on the ball.
If we were doing our jobs.
The lawyer is Madhu Sekaran and Stephen Biss Stephen Biss is from Charlottesville. Madhu is from Cyprus is the address listed on the deal.
Okay.
So that will be an interesting...
Do they work for some reactionary GOP think tank?
I don't, just you look at the fellow from Virginia, and that would be your kind of gut thought is that it's some type of public interest law firm,
right?
But anyhow, so let's do the takeaways, Kyle. If you think you have a defamation lawsuit and you're an individual,
sure.
What is that something you should probably do, or is it something you should maybe think about?
Well, it just depends on the facts of the case.
Let's say someone got online and said Kyle Herbert is a crappy lawyer.
Fair.
Okay.
Yeah. Kyle Herbert is the worst dram shop lawyer in Houston. Kyle Herbert doesn't do dram shop law, so maybe fair. Yeah. So I can let me say this. All joking aside, I have on occasion gotten calls, mostly from old high school friends, because I grew up just down the road in Friendswood, and it almost always has to do with fights amongst people and or parents who otherwise would not get along under any circumstances with anyone. These are usually people looking to pick a fight over nothing. That is not to say that there are not legitimate not to say that there are not legitimate defamation cases. There certainly are. Mm-hmm. Like the case that just was awarded $4.1 million.
Right.
That's a decent chunk of change.
Right.
I think this case in particular, this doctor has an incredibly uphill battle for two reasons. Well, let me say for one reason in her case, and that reason is truth is a defense. And if this hospital, which hospital is it?
Methodist.
Methodist got real good lawyers.
They do.
I've dealt with Methodist before. Yeah. I've sued Methodist. Mm-hmm. And my guess is Methodist is going to show up the day of trial and in discovery with a whole bunch of epidemiological studies about what happens to people in hospitals that have COVID.
Yep.
And there is no way that she's going to be able to refute that with a straight face.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm looking more at the story. So she, apparently according to the Houston Chronicle story, she had suggested and then walked back a claim that Methodist was not treating unvaccinated patients. So, they may have some claim against her. That's the other thing on defamation. In the law, there's a provision where you have to ask the person to retract, and if they retract appropriately, then I think it minimizes your liability in some way, maybe on the gross or punitives. You may know more than I do.
I don't, not in that regard, but I do know this. The two biggest hurdles usually for a defamation case are, one, that truth is a defense, and two, what are your damages?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
So if somebody instant messages you, Peter, and says, you're a dirtbag and a bad lawyer and a liar, Kyle told me, that's not been broadcast to the community.
No.
And so the typical communications amongst people, normal humans, go about their business every day. Like, you just don't have any damage.
Well, this is another one we will follow. But yeah, so the takeaway is, as you said, think really hard before if you really want to do that. If you're a lawyer, think really hard about whether you want to take that case.
I mean, I believe so thoroughly in the veracity and usefulness of most defamation cases that if you've got a great defamation case, don't call me. Call Peter Taaffe.
Yeah, and I'll refer you to a defamation lawyer. The other takeaway is just try not to defame people, and then no one has to worry about that.
Just be nice.
Yeah.
Just just do what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, probably just don't comment or send texts after you've had some drinks.
I'd never do that.
Yeah, good. Well, then I think we won't have that problem.
If I have cocktails, I turn my phone off, except to the extent that I can access Uber.
Very, very smart.
There you go.
All right, well, we'll close the book on that topic, and we'll move on to our next one.
Thanks for joining us this week at the Dirty Verdict Podcast. For links to some of the stories discussed today, please visit our website, www.dirtyverdict.com. If you have obtained a recent verdict and want us to discuss it, please email details on the verdict to us. Also, please follow us wherever you get your podcasts.